I'm going to try and take everyone's temperature before we get started just to see where everyone's at here. How many of you on a scale of mild to intermediate to just off the chain, I'm going to take your temperature kind of 1 being low, 2 being medium, and 3 being high. How many of you have a low plant addiction? Low, low, okay. How many, low, a couple lows, okay. Low, yeah. Intermediate, intermediate. Do we have any people here who like need an intervention? Okay. All right. A handful of us. Okay, a handful. You're in there? Okay. How many of you have been to Earthworks before? Raise a hand. Yep. How many have never been here before? Okay. And did you find us through this event? Yeah? Okay, very cool. So welcome to Earthworks. We are a garden center at this location. We are also a full-service landscape company, and we also provide lawn care and maintenance. And we've been around for over 30 years. And family-owned business here in Jacksonville. And we are open here at the retail location 7 days a week. So come visit us anytime. I've been thinking a lot about this presentation. I have done houseplant presentations before. They've been a little different. They've been for like garden clubs, which is a little bit different. And this is going to be a much wider, broader kind of group here. So that's why I wanted to kind of take the temperature of where everyone's at. And I will tailor my conversation a little bit. And I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. Now, if I spark anything within your heads that makes you want to ask something, please feel free to make a little motion, or like if you're making a bid at an auction or something like that, I'll try and get to you. Try and make it as pertinent to kind of what we're talking about. I do get off track easily. Try not to ask me questions about very, very, very specific plant problems that you're having, because it could take a very long time for me to diagnose what's going on. We could probably do that afterward. But if there's something that I'm talking about that sparks something, you have a question, you feel a strong urge to speak out, I'll ask you probably just to stand up, speak the question as loudly as possible. If I feel like no one heard it, I'll repeat it so that way everyone can hear it. I actually was dreaming about this presentation for the last few weeks. Strangely enough, I have never dreamt about giving a presentation. I have given dozens, if not hundreds, of presentations over the years, so I don't know why I was dreaming about it. But in my dreams, I was dreaming about what I was going to talk about. I was really trying to formulate something that would be good for a broad range of individuals, okay? The houseplant, the care of houseplants attracts a lot of different types of people. It's not just one type of person. This is the first time I have ever made notes for a talk, okay? So this is the first. A lot of you have seen me give talks. I've never had a piece of paper with me because I wanted to look, it's front and I have back, because I wanted to make sure I hit a few certain points. And what we're going to be talking about. A lot of times when I talk, I have a breadth of knowledge on a very specific subject, and I just kind of talk about it. People ask questions on a very specific topic, so it's a little bit different. But today, I wanted to welcome fellow travelers, many of you, fellow travelers with what's called biophilia. For some of you who know what that means, that is a love of nature, a love of spending time with something outside of yourself that's natural. The forest here, some of us like to enjoy our time in the woods. Some of us like to bring the woods into our home, and some of us like to maintain it around our living spaces, right? And we're all on different places in that journey. So this evening, the first thing I want to tell you, and then we'll kind of come back to it at the end, is that there's no such thing as a houseplant. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah, no such thing. There's no such thing as a houseplant. All plants came from out here. It's what we do and what we don't do sometimes is what's important in keeping them healthy inside the house. So I want to tell you a little bit about my origin story. So for some of you on the crazier side of plant addiction, you probably have an origin story. And if you are on that end of the spectrum, you know what I'm talking about. There's a particular plant or a particular moment or a particular event or something that happened that opened your eyes, and all of a sudden you saw plants. Okay, there's a thing called plant blindness as well. Most people have plant blindness. We go through life, we don't even see plants around us. And then one day, some of us have this moment, like, holy, they're everywhere, you know? They're everywhere, they're all around us. It's crazy. And then we go down this rabbit hole sometimes, okay? So I brought this plant, not because it's particularly special, but because I've had this plant in my collection the longest. Over 20 years in my personal care. When I bought it in Houston, Texas, it looked something like this. Okay? And now it looks like this. Okay, now that's bonsai, and we're not going to be talking about bonsai. And this wasn't the first plant that got my eyes open. So there was a person in my life who wanted an orchid, and she wanted a special orchid. And so it wasn't necessarily one that you could find at Publix, okay? I don't even know if they had Publix in Houston. I think it was Kroger or something like that. And so this was back before 2000, like late 90s, so I had to get out like that book that has phone numbers and addresses in it. You guys, some of you might remember that book. Yeah, it was like this thick. Yeah. That person in my life actually used it to stand on to reach things in the cabinet. So funny. So I was looking up like orchids. It's alphabetical. Like it was so crazy because I knew nothing about plants. I really didn't know where to start. But I did find something that had like orchid in the name or greenhouse in the name. I can't remember now. And I don't know if have any of you ever been to Houston before? They have no zoning laws. It's a crazy city. So you'll have businesses next to farms, next to schools, next to skyscrapers, and then you'll have like residential areas, and sometimes there's a greenhouse with exotic plants and orchids in the middle of a neighborhood, and that's where I ended up. So I pulled in the driveway. There's a sign that says come around to the back. It was like a big like 6-foot high wooden fence, and I had to kind of like go in and out. I saw, like, as I was going in, I saw there was like kind of like a swimming pool, but everything was enclosed in the backyard. There's one giant greenhouse in the backyard. And so I kind of poking my way through. There's like a little lobby area with a whole bunch of exotic plants, and I started smelling something. I remember the air was very like warm and humid. And as soon as I came around a corner, I saw for my first time like a growing, working greenhouse, where this individual had been growing and raising and breeding very unique species of orchids inside this greenhouse. And it was kind of like walking into Walt Disney World for the first time. It was like the colors, the smells, the fragrances, everything. I was like, holy crap. I had no idea what I was walking into. I walked up and down the aisles, up and down the aisles, up and down the aisles, and I ended up buying 12 orchids, one for that person in my life, and the other 11 for me. Luckily, this was tail end of the 90s. The internet was out. I had been literally bitten by something. I had never really been interested in plants before, never. But something about that experience with these crazy, like living organisms, like woke me. I was just awake all of a sudden. And I couldn't get enough. For the following months and the following years, I couldn't get enough information. I had to soak it all up and soak it all in. So I had what's called an orchid phase. Many of you may have had an orchid phase before. We all can have different phases. If we go down this journey long enough with plants, we can have all different types of plant interests. I'm a little promiscuous with my plants. I have all kinds of different plant interests simultaneously. I used to specialize, but now I find it's more fun just to have a whole bunch of different species all at once. It keeps me entertained. I get bored easily, so the more varieties that puzzle me, the better. It keeps me busy. So that was kind of my origin story, and I couldn't get enough plants. And it was so crazy because for some of you who've been observing and interacting with plants, there's a moment to where you've seen enough of them to where you start seeing similarities between plant species, even similar cousins within plant species, and you start recognizing that these are probably related somehow, they're similar, or maybe they came from a similar part of the world. So I remember my first mistake. I walked into this florist and I saw these plants. They had these thick, tuberous, kind of waxy roots, and I thought it was an orchid, because if you've seen orchid roots, they're kind of thick and tuberous and waxy. And they were selling them for $10. And they had a whole bunch of them, like, oh my God, they're only $10. So I bought like 20 of them. Got them home. They were agapanthus. They were agapanthus, which is like a very common, you know, lily in our garden. I had no idea, but I saw those roots and they had a similar looking root, okay? So I took them back, all right? So luckily I got my money back. They were not orchids. But that is what happens to some of us. We start seeing plants, we start seeing things about them, we start learning how to see those patterns, and we start to look them up. Now, in this day and age, we have a cell phone, right? So we can do that research sometimes before we buy. But then I didn't have a cell phone. I just saw something which I thought was an orchid for super cheap. I grabbed it and I took it home. I had a lot of successes in the beginning, but I had a lot more failures. There was an old gardening master, happens to be an old bonsai master. He says, you haven't learned the first lesson until you've killed 1,000 trees. Okay, how many of you have killed a dozen plants? How many 100? Come on, more than 100? A few of you out there? Sometimes you feel a little guilty, right? Sometimes you want to give up. But for those of us who end up mastering and learning, you have to keep killing plants to learn, okay? But you can't repeat the same mistakes over and over and over and expect different results, right? They call that insanity, yeah? I would do that. So I had an apartment that I lived in, so what I could grow was very limited. I had a patio, luckily that was kind of shady, and I could move plants indoors and out and rotate things and try different things and try different settings and different situations and things like that, which helped the success rate go up a little bit. Hopefully you get to the point to where you have more alive at the end of the year than you do dead. Okay, then you're winning, right? If you have more alive that you started with than you do dead, then you're starting to get that curve in the right direction. Okay. Sometimes we force things upon our plants that they don't want. Has anyone ever tried to put a plant in a position that you kind of knew you probably shouldn't have and just hope for the best? Yeah. I saw a hand back there too. Yeah. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't work. Okay, so plants need specific things. We know that. We can look them up now. So it's really up to us to try to simulate as close as possible the situation where these plants derive from. Okay, so putting a cactus in a sauna, probably not a good idea. Okay, trying to bring in a plant that needs 6+ hours of sun a day into a shady corner of the house, not for long, right? It's going to start turning yellow, dropping leaves real quick. It's going to be stressed out. It doesn't have the energy that it needs to survive. So a while back, I found that there's 3 things that will exponentially, and this is the key. There's no magic wand, there's no Harry Potter, there's no silver bullet, there's no nothing, but there's 3 things. And seriously, if you can master these 3 things, your success rate will quadruple, maybe more. There's no green thumb. What it is it's passion. You have to have passion, because if you don't care or you're too busy, I would purchase a toaster. Okay? It's passion, it's observation, and it's interaction. That's it. It's as simple as that. You have to care about the plants, you have to observe them, and you have to interact with them. But the interaction can be a killer, especially if you have one plant. It gets all your love, doesn't it? I recommend having at least 30 if you got that itch. So that way you can spread the pain across 30 plants, okay? So in my backyard, I literally have hundreds, I'm not kidding, I have hundreds of plants in containers. Most of them are bonsai because I'm into that, but it keeps that itch of doing and caring and maintaining and that hobby and that time I want to spend with plants spread across hundreds, not one, because this thing would have been dead a long time ago if it was the only one I had, okay? So that point, you guys get that point, right? You got to spread that love around, okay? Seriously. So the passion is key. You have to set yourself up for success, okay? You got to know how many plants is too many, too little is too little. You had to have that balance. You got to have that time in your schedule. You have to have that knowledge about what the plant needs to begin with. The time in the schedule is crucial. It's really crucial, whether you're talking about house plants or garden, outside, or whatever, or anything in life. Just having that time in your schedule to do it, setting yourself up for success. You get to put post-it notes everywhere in the house, or post-it notes next to the plants with little crib notes on what each one wants until you have it memorized and figure it out. You can't treat them all the same. They're all different, okay? It's even worse than having kids. I mean, they're a little bit more specific than kids in their care. You can't be just dropping off ice cubes every once in a while on the top and expect that's gonna be fine. You can't walk by with your cup of water when you happen to think of them and just pour a little water in. It's not gonna do it, okay? For lots of reasons. I mean, you need to water your plants, so you water them so the water goes through the top, out the bottom, and flushes completely. Especially if you're watering with tap water. I dare you to look up a list of what's in our tap water and imagine what's accumulating in that soil if you're just topping it off. You gotta flush it out, okay? Because you just top it off, there's a lot of metals in there that in little doses, and minerals in little doses are fine, but if you're just topping it, you're not ever flushing it, those minerals and things build up to a toxic level. I knew a person, I'm not going to name my association to them, but every house plant in their house, and they love them, it was that one leaf on every plant that was just barely hanging on. Just, you know, you've seen those house plants, right? Or any plant that's just that one plant, and then you're just waiting for that last one to drop. Every house, and then on the top of the soil was this orangey white kind of crust. And I inquired about the watering schedule, and this person was a topper-offer. They would just come by and just top it off every once in a while, okay? So your plants do need to have some outdoor time or a place indoors where you can flush them completely, okay? If you can find a way to collect rainwater, that's their favorite kind of water, okay? If you don't have a rain barrel or some way to do it, it can be difficult, but if you can, they love rainwater. It's the best, okay? If you set your tap water out for 24 hours, the chlorine at the very least will evaporate out. Okay, so if you have a watering day or a watering schedule of some sort, you fill up some containers, keep the caps off if they have lids, let that chlorine evaporate. That will increase some plant happiness for sure. If your plants could talk, they would literally thank you. Yeah, for sure. How about trial and error? Really important. Trial and error, trying different things, not forcing things upon the plants. They really don't like it, you know. Square peg in the round hole with the plant, and they're gonna be stressed out. These little guys, have you tried a humidifier? Anyone? Yep, a few. Some plants will go gaga. You'll be surprised, especially some plants that are like on the edge of thriving. They're like happy, they're kind of chill, but they're not really doing much. A little extra humidity. Have any of you taken a botany class lately? There's one back there.
Years ago.
Okay, years ago. Well, I would recommend, because we have the internet, you can take a botany course for free online, okay? Look some basic botany 101 up. The more you understand how plants grow and what they need, the higher your success rates are going to go. I guarantee it. Just understanding their basic physiology, understanding what they need, how they work, what they require, what nutrients are, what the different nutrients do for the plant, because you can use nutrients like a chemistry set and give plants specific things for specific purposes at different ratios, and that will make plants a lot happier too. How many of you fertilize your plants? Okay, most everyone. Okay, plants do need food. They really do. I used to not fertilize and had a lot of very mixed results, mostly on the bad side. Started fertilizing, but then I started fertilizing wrong because I'm not one who likes to read instructions, and I would think that more is better. Because I'm probably going to do this once every 3 months, right? So I might as well put a couple extra scoops in. And then I would burn my plants. Either their roots or their foliage would burn. Yes?
So I do have a question about fertilization.
Yes.
How important is it to know those three numbers? And if you've got a lot of plants, like you really need to focus on understanding those numbers.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So she said, how important is it to know what those three numbers mean? I'd say pretty important. I will say if you're going to pick one fertilizer, try and find one that with a balanced ratio, generally speaking. Always use as directed. More is not better. The people who make fertilizers, they are giving you that recommendation because that's what needs to happen to give the plant what it needs without too much or too little. And then use it as directed. Okay, like as often as it says you should. Because there is a difference between a plant that's alive and a plant that's thriving. And you can see the difference when a plant's thriving as opposed to when it's just alive. And then as opposed to if it's struggling. So, you will see differences. There are all types of fertilizers out there. And I'll get to that a little bit toward the end on how we can give our plants some things that will give them advantage. But the best part about all this is that we live in the 21st century and we don't use phone books and encyclopedias anymore. We have our gadgets that we keep on us. And we can literally know anything that we want about these plants, especially within these last few years, especially about plants that people who've been doing this for 20 years had never seen until just the last 6 months. We're seeing more plants coming into circulation. It's crazy. And then we have plants now selling for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I used to sell for 15 bucks. It's just, we're living in a very crazy and very exciting plant time. It's very exciting. It's very exciting for me. It's very exciting seeing y'all's faces when you come in looking for plants. I remember the first time I saw someone come in with a grocery list for plants. It was a millennial, and I was so excited. I'm like, oh my God, they're finally here. They're finally interested in plants. They're finally here. Thanks to millennials. I saw this young lady, she had this list and she was looking and she was checking and she was asking, do you have this one, do you have this one? Just like someone going to the grocery store. It was so cool. Thank you, millennials. Thank you so much. Thank you. We were worried that you weren't going to like plants, but you do. You guys do, and we love you for it. I mean, it was nerve-wracking. It really was, because sometimes things skip a generation or two. You never know. So it's very thrilling for plant nerds like me to see people of all ages very excited about plants in general. House plants is fun. The types of plants that we're seeing. Just so you guys know, the growers of these plants, they're nuts right now. They are nuts. They have been working so hard to grow these plants. A lot of these plants grow very slowly, okay? That's part of the reason why we see the prices the way they are. So plants that they're producing now that they're pumping out every 6, 9, 12 months for a crop to get ready, could have been sitting in their greenhouse for years before they had demand for it, and so we would see, these crazy variegated monsteras. They were huge. They were like the size of this one here, and we'd sell them for like 20 bucks, like variegated monsteras. And then there was a time we couldn't even give them away. No one wanted them, and now you can't find them, and if you find them, they're hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So this is a very exciting time, and I really feel like things are going to level off. So for those of you who do like the rares and the unusuals and the hard to find, I'm really hoping that we'll see that leveling off, because the farms are doing their best and they're increasing production. I've been seeing it on the purchasing end. I'm seeing more and more things coming available, which is really good. Farms are taking time off, and they have people from every department who works in these giant greenhouses. From every back office job, they'll take a week off just to plant. And they have everyone in the whole company just planting to keep up. It's crazy. So they won't take any orders, some of them, for a week at a time, just so they can keep production going. So they are trying to keep up with us, for sure. Now, I'm not going to point any fingers because I don't know you all very well, but it's really easy to be a plant snob, okay? If you're a plant snob, you know who you are, okay? You're like, I only like these plants, or I only like these plants, or I only like these plants. Oh, we have a couple right there. Yeah, they're in every group, trust me. But that's okay, because you're focused, and you're gonna learn that plant, you're gonna master it, and then you're gonna find another plant that you're really into. And that's the fun part, is that I was only orchids for a long time, because until I really felt like I had orchids down, I was not ready to move on. But as you take on and learn and know how to grow more and more, your snobbery gets less and less, because you've gained knowledge that applies to so many things. And you can apply that same knowledge and that same information across a lot of different species, okay? It's really cool. All right, and always remember, pothos paved the way. I'm gonna coin that right now. Pothos paved the way. So don't hate on pothos just because it's like, oh, it's just pothos. It's so boring. I've seen that like everywhere. It's like $10. Who cares, you know? Pothos paved the way. You know, it's one of the easiest, most used, most grown house plants for a reason. I'm saying that generically. There are a lot of plants that you all know I'm talking about that are in that pothos category, okay? Boring, so-and-so, boring. Seen that around. And you haven't even tried it yet, you know? Try it, grow it. You might like really fall in love with it. Imagine that plant in your house creating all that extra oxygen for you. It might make you happier too, okay? So some easy plants every once in a while, right? To take the burden off. Like you have like 500 plants in your house and every one of them's difficult and you're stressed out for a reason. Get some easy ones in there too. And if you need help picking the easy ones, we'll be more than happy to point them out. I'm sure you already know what they are. And I'm never giving advice to millennials, just so you know, okay? I know you guys have all the answers already, just so you know, okay? I'm serious. I'm so serious. Like, I tried to help this young person one time. They're like, they just like tilted their head and pulled out their phone. Like, I got it. It's all good. It's like, and I'm not a boomer, by the way. Okay. Also, if you're getting into plants, you need to be checking out cutting edge science. There's a lot of fun stuff. If you like to geek out on anything, there's a lot of cutting edge science going on in botany, okay? Fun, exciting, and actually paradigm shifting information coming out of science right now about plants. We used to think they were stupid and that we could do whatever the heck we wanted with them. Just cut them down, burn them, turning them into houses, furniture, whatever. That's all I'm really going to say about that, but just do some searching online. It's fascinating stuff out there. There's fascinating stuff about what's happening in the forest floor. There's billions and billions of microbes and miles of mycorrhizal fungi that literally broker nutrients from one plant to the other. There is a third party involved called mycorrhizae, and they're literally brokering nutrients. It's amazing. You guys should look it up. It'll blow your mind. It will blow your mind. It's very exciting. You won't look at plants the same again. And then there's this lady, this Italian lady. She's very special. She's high on my list. Monica Gagliano. Monica Gagliano is her name. She did some experiments with sensitive plants. You know those ones that you touch the leaves and they close? Have you heard about the experiment?
No.
Have you heard about the experiment? Okay, so in a laboratory, in a controlled environment, she took these sensitive plants that close when they're touched or they moved or the wind blows real hard. She put them on a flat table that had a hinge and it would drop them. First time she dropped them, their leaves closed. Second time, she waited a half hour, dropped them, they did not close. It's like, this is interesting. She waited a month. Put them on top of the table, dropped them, they did not close. What was she testing for? Memory. Mind-blowing. Okay, she did another test with sound. Sound. Do plants hear? No, they don't have ears. They can't hear. Shoot. She put up this experiment where she played the sound of water with peas. And she set up this maze. They could choose left or right, left or right. She had the sound of water on one side, no sound on the other. Left, 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 left. So, does the sound of water create a wave that's the same whether it's a recording or actual water? Probably. Sound waves. Everything's got a wave, everything's got a vibe. Those plants were picking up on it, moving toward water. I bet they were disappointed when they found out it was a speaker. I would have been. For sure. But we're learning about plants, you guys, and it's freaking amazing. Are they alive? Yes. Are they sentient? Maybe. They can remember things. They can hear things. What's next? We're going to find out. So you got to listen. You got to look for it. Okay, now to the nitty-gritty. Fertilizer. A lot of people didn't raise your hands, okay? All right, so the soil that you have around your plants, when you buy it, has some fertilizer in it. Eventually, the plants will use it, right? Okay, it's dinner time, and you have a plate of food, and you eat it. It's gone. Unless someone puts some more mashed potatoes and gravy back on the table, there's no more food, okay? So it is up to us to put the input back into the soil, okay? If we don't input, the plant is eventually going to starve, okay? That's just as simple as it is. And you're scratching your head, wondering why your plant looks like crap. Well, it's because you haven't fed it. Now, if it was a baby screaming, you would put a bottle in its mouth, okay? It's a good thing a lot of you don't have plants that have mouths on them. They'd probably be cussing you out right now. Get me out of this house. Take me to the neighbors. I saw them. They had Miracle Grow in their hand. You know? Seriously. So feed your plants. Feed them however you want, but do it right. There's slow release. I use slow release and I use liquid. On the tops of my pots, I put a granular slow release. Okay? Every Saturday or Sunday, it switches. The plants are always kind of nervous. They're not sure which day they're going to get the tropical punch. But it's either Saturday or Sunday. I go out into the backyard and I have a little pump sprayer. Get all my plants outside. Most of them are already out there already. And I will feed the foliage with the liquid. Plants can absorb nutrients through the leaves. Super cool. Okay, so we know that they make oxygen for us. There's little holes in the leaves that the oxygen comes out of, okay? Those same holes can receive nutrients. So if we spray them, we're putting the nutrients at the top of the plant, which is where the plant wants it. The roots make the food, send it up to the top so they can boing, put out new growth or flowers or whatever. Plants want food on the top. You're cutting out the middleman, which now maybe they could do something else, okay? So slow release on top of the soil, some granulars, some shaken feeds. There's a whole bunch of them out there. I'm not advocating brands. You guys can choose. And then a water-soluble liquid I do once a week. Now, there are some exceptions to that. Okay, might be some unusual plants that don't want as much food as others, and there are some out there. So think about like a desert plant, okay, that maybe comes from poor soil, or if you have a plant in your collection that maybe originated on a rocky cliff in between, you know, a little tiny crack. It probably didn't evolve in a lush rainforest where there's plenty of food, okay? So it might not need as much. So learn your plant, get a sense of how often to feed it. But if you feed it as they desire it or they want it, they will thrive and they will bloom and they will put out new leaves and they will do the things that we want them to. Thank you so much for coming and your time. Come back and see us. So great to meet you.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
It's not